Welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Inside Track. We've got a fantastic guest on again with us, Andy King from Miova. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Ryan. How are you?
Yeah, awesome, thank you. Now, we had you on probably a couple of series ago, and when I think you were in a different role, and obviously you've moved over now to Miova, gone alone as a change consultant. You are now. Probably the best thing to do before we crack into everything else that we're going to talk about is do you want to run quickly through what you're doing, what exactly Miova is?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So a bit of a change. Still can't get used to having anything to do with consultant attached to me. It's a bit strange, but I'm getting used to it slowly. But many decades of being an operator. I'm really pleased as well, actually, because I'm still although I left Manchester Active, I'm still the chairman of GM Active. So that's really good. The board have decided to keep me on, which is the first sort of independent chairman that we've had as GM Active. So that's good. So I've still got a foot in the camp of the operators, which I think is really important.
I think it's important to you, but I think it's also important to them, Andy. I think you've played such a massive role in that organisation that I think it'd be daft to lose you out of it, to be fair.
Well, that's very kind. I mean, I think I do get the opportunity to talk about things like Pre-Ab for Cancer and the Transformational Leadership Program, which is not my personal work. You know, I've obviously been involved in it, but it is the collective, and that's the sort of where I'm going now. Where I suppose for the last few years, being chair of GM Active, through the pandemic and working at Rochdale with the All Trust, only recently this year went to Manchester, but the sort of pressure, if you like, was building on me in terms of, well, what is it I'm doing? And so I've got my day job, which I was getting paid for, and then I wasn't getting paid for the GM Active stuff, and the related things to GM Active. So as a sector, is working. We call it the pivot to active wellbeing and all that sort of stuff. Getting more and more involved in that. It's my passion. I think it's something that I've got something to add, and
Absolutely.
It was really a case of saying, okay, well, there's an opportunity came along. I went to speak to Ken Massa, who's the owner of Miova, and for some advice, to be honest with you, about doing what I've done, going self-employed and actually sort of taking the plunge, and really making myself available. And Ken had only recently done that himself, where he'd set up Miova, and the conversation went so well that he basically, look, do you want to come and do some work with me, and I'll chuck you a few quid to make it easier. So that's all the sort of help I needed, really, just to go, actually, do you know what, I'm going to do this. So gave up a rather well-paid, high-profile job, and I'm doing this instead. But I'm really happy with my choice so far. I think I still can't get used to it. I keep thinking I better jump on an operations con call in a minute or something, or go visit some centres, and I don't have to do that anymore. But it's fascinating. So it's nice to have a little bit of time to learn and to read and to sort of sharpen my own saw, as they say, but also then to get into this consultation and basically making myself available for organisations or individuals who want to grapple with this pivot to active wellbeing, if you like, and hopefully I can take some of the learnings that we've gained from working in GM, not just GM Active, but with GM Moving, with Hayley Lever and people like that, really good forward-thinking people, and work alongside people to try and figure this out about how we actually work better with health and with social care, whether it being a national level, a regional level like GM, or a very local level. Some of the stuff we've done in Rochdale in particular is amazing. Some of the other GM boroughs have got some fantastic programs, and that's an ambition of mine, actually, to actually highlight and put the spotlights in various ways on what's already going on in the sector, because I think there's a perception, I think it's very clear, there's a perception of our sector that is just false and it's outdated, but we're a bit rubbish at actually presenting an alternative proposition, if you like, which really should highlight some of the fantastic work that's already going on in the sector. And when we talk about pivoting, and people are now sort of saying, "Oh, well, it's not pivoting because we've been doing this for years." Yeah, we have, but not at scale, and we're not getting commissioned. We're not part of the overall picture. and you only have to read so many articles where the NHS, article after article, comes out about the NHS being short of resources and staff, and they're going to pharmacies, for instance, 9 times out of 10. And yet I'm there going, well, we could do that with a bit of additional training and upskilling. We could help with this army of people and resources and facilities out there, be it public or private sector. We could really be helping and being part of that system change. And I want to be free to able to help as much as I can influence that agenda.
And in terms of probably, obviously, I come from predominantly a private sector background. Obviously, you're more public sector. For those out there that don't understand what, because let's be honest, it's probably more than a pivot. When you think pivot, it's a sort of slight movement to another direction. I mean, this is a seismic change. Let's be honest, in terms of what you guys have been doing, especially up north in GM Active and so on. But like you say, there's pockets elsewhere that have been doing it as well. But it's not a pivot. It's almost we're taking the industry that was this. It was fitness. That's what we did. It was fitness. Now we're going to take it into well-being, and suddenly that goes from that to that. And I guess what probably it's probably not that easy to describe. But how would you describe what that move that you guys are trying to shift the industry into, and what's the sort of end goal? Where do you want that to look?
Yeah. You're absolutely right, Ryan. I think it's almost a revolution, and it's a revolution that's got to start from within each of us, really, because we've got to be honest about our purpose and what we're trying to achieve. And I'll expand on that in a minute. But so this is about a system. So the system that we operate in, often we are external to the system that we're trying to be part of. So the examples I just gave, that people don't even think of coming to us for things, even in the pandemic. It's get active, do all this stuff, and then we're the last ones to open. The pubs are open before us. So there's as Jim Collins in Good to Great says, confront the brutal facts. The facts are staring us in the face. We are not perceived to be part of the solution to getting people healthier through physical activity or wider wellbeing services. So that's got to be our starting point. And then we've got to ask ourselves why and what can we do about that. And I think this is where we get onto systems leadership. And it's interesting, it's illuminating that Sport England are about to invest millions of pounds in places to actually work on whole systems leadership and this approach. And why that is so important is because we can't do everything. We've got to be seen to be part of the wider collaborative picture in a place, or regionally or nationally, to say, look, we understand our part to play here, and that we have to take responsibility for what we need to think differently and behave differently to be part of that overall picture. It's no good just saying, well, if you commission us, we can sort out your weight management problems. We know that's bollocks. It can't be done. So, but we can be part of the overriding picture. So, you'd have to look at the obesogenic environment, a surrounding area, and we can provide the physical activity or part of the physical activity. But also other things need to happen in an area in a systemic way to actually make that change. And there's some great examples that exist in other sort of topics, if you like, that say that the systems approach is the only way of dealing with some of these what they call complex issues. It's more than just a complicated issue; it's complex, which is why they take some solving, and they take they require a long-term view where people come together. They leave their badge at the door, which again is some things we say in GM. We've come together to say all of our differences, whether we're a national operator or a local small trust. There's so many differences that we could focus on, and I guess in the early days we probably did. And we're there going, oh, what can we get out of GM Active? Well, actually, our success, for what it's worth, has been more about the mindset that we've adopted, where we've got a shared strategy and a shared purpose. And we've said it's about population health in GM. So if we're going to do anything, it's about focus on that outcome of improving population health. And when you go and talk to people like GM Cancer, we're not there going, within minutes, oh, how much are you going to commission us for? We're saying, what's your need? We understand and take time to understand what the issue is from their perspective and listen to them, really listen to them, and then co-design a solution. And funnily enough, we get £500,000 a year plus, and we're expanding prehab, as you know, I think, much, much bigger because of the success of it. And we win further down the line, if you like, financially. But that cannot be the reason we do this to start with. If it is, that's why we get pushed back all the time and ignored. So we have to be clear on our purpose collectively, and then take steps to work as part of the wider system. Stay in your lane, if you like. Know what we're good at. Yes, we can expand services, and we need to. Workforce development is a massive part of this in terms of upskilling and being more aligned to what we're trying to achieve. And I think that's the key, and that's why Sport England have put in a lot of money into this approach, following on from the 12 local pilots up down the country. They've gone, look, some of this is working, some of this is actually beginning to have an effect. So we're going to invest in this and actually bring people together at a local level to see what can be done.
I guess the key is, and what's important here is you're not saying fitness is going to come in, so we're going to come in, we have the solution, this is what we're going to do. You're almost sort of going, okay, we need to get all the parties together and go, what do you need from us? What do they need from them? What do they need from them?
Yeah.
And that's how you create the plan. Because you're right. I think what happens is we sit on the outside and go, we can be the solution. And you're not going, actually, no, we're not the solution. We are a small cog in what makes that whole engine work, but we are only a small part. So when you hear it all the time, government needs to give us this, government needs to give us that, and you're sort of going, yeah, but when you look at the great scheme of things, we actually are only a small part. We can play a bigger part, and we can influence. We can have a part to play with the NHS, with sport, with all of those, but we are a part of that. And I think that's where the mindset needs to change, is what you guys have done really well. It creates that collaborative approach rather than say, we're going to come in and provide the solutions. So going, well, that's quite an arrogant approach to suddenly believe we're going to solve the crisis in the UK.
Yeah, and there's, it's like all these things, because it's a complex issue. It's like, well, you don't want to undersell ourselves either. So it's a balance of things. But who would have thought that I'd be saying, I've written an article about, the weight loss, the Wegovy or Wegovy, whatever it's called, the weight weight loss injection. And I'm advocating that we should be part of that solution so that our staff could be trained up to deliver I've never have thought of that myself. And I feel a bit uncomfortable even saying it, but the NHS are saying that's what we want to do, and we're short of staff to do it. So again, whether we agree with it or not, and the people are at liberty to disagree, I feel a bit uncomfortable with it. But if that's what they need, and we're capable of doing that, it shows that we're listening to their needs and saying, is there any way we can help here? Another one that's just come out is the blood pressure. So the NHS health checks, you're still going to have to go to the pharmacist to get your blood pressure taken, probably. So why can't we do that? And it's been proven that catching people with higher blood pressure and getting the intervention sooner rather than later, which definitely can include physical activity, then that could also be something that we could be part of, where we could be offering. And I've done this 20, 30 years ago. We say, come in and have a free health check, but let's do it at scale and actually make this part of our overriding purpose, to listen to the NHS and social care as well. That's a whole different ball game as well, and see what we can do with some development of our staff to learn some new skills, also brush up on some of the old ones in some cases, and actually go forward from there. And then we can be in the room as part of this system approach where people are going, actually, what else can you do? Then we can start to be listened to and maybe be a bit more proactive in our suggestions. But we've got to step up and help at the moment. And I think that's the difference between going into a room and saying, you need to commission us, to actually going into a room and saying, how can we help? What's your real problems? And genuinely listen with an intention of co-designing some solutions going forward. And if we could adopt that approach, because this is what happens on a local basis. When people say, oh, should we be concentrating on national, regional, it should all be local, I'm saying all three. I want all. I'm greedy. I want all three. I think we have to take the whole system, and we need to work on this. But if you look at any of the examples, and I mean any of them that I've been involved in at a more place-based, local level, working with health colleagues of various different aspects, whether it's exercise and referral schemes or mental health programs, whatever, it always starts with, we want to help. We want to utilize our assets, our staff and our buildings in a way that helps you. We need to understand what it is you're trying to achieve, and then we can actually align our resources to help you. That's the approach that I think anybody listening to this would go, Oh yeah, we do some really good stuff, and we've always adopted that approach. Of course we have. Fine. But there's too many that don't, and on a national scale, we're not perceived to be taking that approach going forward. UK Active and Kenny Butler at UK Active and the guys are getting there. They're really making that difference, I think, and listening to that. That my issue with, well, not my issue, but my suggestion is to cast the net even wider and look at social care as well, and actually see what we can do for the government on all of the well-being and wellness issues.
I guess some people will probably say, well, get one right, move to the next. But it's one of those things. It's trying to find those angles where you can sort of go to the government. Because let's be honest, the government brought out their report, get more people active. Can't remember exactly what the name of the report. You'll probably be able to enlighten me. But we were missed out pretty much as an industry. Yes, there's little bits in there. There's a few little bits to throw us a bone. But as an industry, we're trying, or the government to come out and say, let's get all these people active and we'll improve the health of the nation. But hardly any of that involves UK Sport in there, all those. But when it came to fitness and our leisure centres and the private sector, we just weren't included. I don't think UK Active gets a mention. Or if they do, it's a one-liner. And that's not them. I'm not blaming UK Active. That's the government going, we don't see the value in what you guys are delivering. And that was quite scary when that came out. And it was a bit like, hold on, why? I don't get it, especially with some of the great stuff you guys have been doing.
Yeah, it's I read something you wrote about it at the time, Ryan, and you're absolutely right. And it's another evidence, I was saying earlier, it's evidence that we're just not in their minds when it comes to this, and we're not seeing our proposition isn't strong enough to get them to turn to us when these things are being written. I mean, on the more positive front, there's a general election coming, and I genuinely think that the approach from the, get into politics, but the approach from the politicians on the current government is more about behaviour change at an individual level, because that's the Tory politics. Everybody take responsibility for yourselves and sort yourselves out, more or less. Now, if it changes to a Labour government, you can expect a change in that, obviously, because that's the politics that are at play as well. And then you've got things like the Kim Ledbetter report, which I think gives us great hope. So, without wishing, well, I am wishing for a change in government, to be quite frank. I think most people are, to be fair, as local general elections, the by-elections.
I think even the Tories are asking for a new government. So
yeah, I think they are. I think they're fed up as well. So I think there's we have to, whoever's in charge, there's no new money in the system. The systems are still going to be under strain that we're talking about. The thing that we've got to take responsibility for, we do have the capability of doing this if we get our act together, is changing ourselves and actually changing our proposition, as I say. And I think, again, we've got to get behind the likes of UK Active, who are doing everything they can with Mike Farrar and everybody else to lead this change and get the proposition right. I am a little bit concerned about the approach taken, because I think it does need to be this system approach, where we understand what we can contribute and what we should really work with others to do so. But I think that's where we've got to put some scope and some hope into the Kim Ledbetter report, a change in government, and say, look, if we can get this right, then we can be part of the solution going forward with a different political will. But we've really got to understand that we have to be seen to be conscious, very conscious of the issues of the day, and what our services and our assets can do to help. We can't solve anything on our own, but we can be part of a wider solution. So we need to understand the problems properly, and then understand what our part could be going forward, and go from there.
I mean, I must admit, I've seen a big change in how UK Active have approached things, and I don't know whether that's because different personnel in there, but you can actively see a change in mindset. I mean, they've always been around, obviously, but I think they're starting to get some leverage which
Yeah.
obviously it's a slow one, but I think there's more and more of the right people in there now making the right changes and the right noises. So long may that continue. But obviously they've got to continue to work with UK Sport, SimSpa, and create that collaborative approach which you're talking about. Just one thing that'd be interesting, Andy, because obviously you work with a lot of the leisure trusts and driving the innovation in that way. Do you think that we'll see a time where the private sector will start to be drawn into it? Because I think at the minute there very much is a them and us. In terms of all the things, when you talk public health and everything else, you never think private sector. It just doesn't come to your mindset. It's always, what are the likes of GM Active doing? What are the likes of the Leisure Trust doing? Because they're the ones that have got the closer links to NHS and so on. But you never really think about, let's include the private sector. Is that something that gets discussed within your networks?
Yeah, it does. It very much does. I'm on or was on the membership council for UK Active. I can't be on there now because I'm no longer classed as an operator, so I've got to come off. But unfortunately, but recently the membership council, made up of all the different, the private sector, the independents, the outdoor eds, and the public sector. We discussed this, and we had a little bit of a task to go off and talk in our sort of public sector, private sector groups, and then come back and answer some questions about health and our appetite for working with health and our concerns and all the rest of it. And it went really well. There's the private sector were there. I think the ethos underpinning public sector operations is always going to lend itself closer to work with public health in particular. They're quite often in the same council and things like that. So there's the connections there. But this goes back to systems leadership again. If you actually make the connections in a place, then if the private sector want to be involved, then they should be involved, and they got to, it will become clear through discussion how they could be involved. And I give an example in Manchester, where I've recently left, Manchester Active. We've got a website which invites anybody that's got anything to do with physical activity to go through a quality assurance check and then be put onto the website, which is, in all intents and purposes, a council website, but it's there as like a directory for people to find anything to do with physical activity. So we've got, private gyms on there and chains and all sorts on there, which some of my public sector colleagues, and probably me when I was in Rochdale, I was thinking, oh, I don't know about that. Actually, that is a genuine system approach saying, let's make it easy, focus on the customer, the person who's searching high and low for the best solution for their physical activity needs. And they can find it now on one portal, which is fantastic. So I also think another example would be when we're talking about some of the expansion of the likes of Prehab for Cancer, but other referral schemes, smoking cessation, stuff like that. If the private sector PTs, and I've spoken to the guys at Your PT fairly recently, I think they've got a massive role to play, because as demand is definitely out there. There's plenty of people who could do with some help. And we don't have the volume of staff and the volume of highly qualified staff that often the PTs are. And PTs could be in a club, they could be independent. So I think, there's definitely opportunities. And I think some of the things that are being talked about now is saying, take the PT qualifications and what could they do to become health coaches or well-being coaches. And again, you'll know some, I've known some for years that have gone on and diversified and offer more than just personal training. They offer life coaching and everything else. There's a role there for those coaches, whether they come from a PT background or indeed the health and well-being coaches themselves need to be put in. So again, if you take a collaborative, holistic approach and say, right, who's up for this in a place, step forward and let's have that discussion about how you can actually be part of this. And if we could do that ourselves, you'd have the likes of the NHS and public health going, blimey, look at that, a one-stop shop of a collective that are trying understand our needs. They've got a stated purpose to improve population health. Why wouldn't we work with them? So I think it's on us. The onus is to bring people together. And this is again what Miova is all about, is start saying, look, can we go into a place and actually identify the current system and then look at the connections that can be made and invite others to join into the system. And then we can really start to motor.
And who are you guys working with at the moment? Where's your focus? Is it up and down the country? Are you particularly working on certain areas?
Up and down the country, Ryan. We'll work with places. So we're working with some of the councils up north predominantly, but not exclusively. We're working or will be working with some operators who are looking to understand this in more detail, to be honest. We're hoping to do some work with Simspa as well,
Wow.
to see how we can actually put something together that perhaps nationally people can tap into and just find out a little bit more. But the difference is, I guess, we're prepared to work with anyone who wants to work with us to understand more about this opportunity and what we're talking about. And ideally, what we want to do is find people who are saying, look, we've got some opportunity to pull people together across the system to do this. So again, it could be a catalyst, and has been in some cases, from the councils themselves, from the public health, saying, look, we like what GeoMactive have done by pulling their operators together. Can you help us do something similar? And very much so. The answer is absolutely yes. We absolutely can. So I think on the back of the Sport England investment in local places that's coming out, well, just beginning to sort of be rolled out now, then no doubt we'll hopefully we'll be involved in some of those places which are up and down the country. There's even stuff going on abroad, and I think there's some fantastic examples abroad that have made some interesting reading in terms of how they're getting on with using whole systems collaborative approaches to address some of their physical activity needs and health needs. So yeah, it's early days, but yeah, exciting sort of reaction so far to us putting ourselves out there, really.
And in terms of the sort of movement, do you see any areas that are particularly ahead of the game? Is it the sort of GeoMactive? Is it, you know, where do you see the sort of bright spots at the moment?
There are many, right? The thing that since, and this is partly my decision to do what I've done, because I was becoming increasingly aware through some of the publicity that you've helped me have, and others, people are knocking on the door almost, metaphorically, and saying, "Oh, we're doing this. What do you think?" Some great example. Mark Tweedy up in Harrogate has always been a front runner, as you know, but Mark has then pulled together with David Monkhouse some of the local authority trading companies who are not allowed to be part of Community Leisure UK. Community Leisure UK have got some great examples that they've documented, some brilliant examples of what's going on in social enterprise trusts. The LATCOs that Mark Tweedy and Brimham's Active are part of, their network have got some, again, fabulous examples of what's going on. And you know what? Usually nobody hears about them. They're not high profile, like, in respect of GeoMactive, for instance. Most people now know about pre-alpha cancer, GeoMactive, if they're in our sector. But increasingly, loads of people don't know about the really good stuff that's going on in other areas. Even my old trust in Rochdale, some of the stuff that went on there, which has got a value of over £1 million a year, by the way, of commissions.
Wow.
Quietly just getting on with it and doing some fantastic stuff for the community there. And I really want to use those examples and flesh them out, so that we can, and me and others, and so that, again, it all helps to duplicate some of the good stuff going on, take those learnings and put them somewhere else, adapt them for your own area, but also change that narrative, if you like, for government and others on a regional basis, whatever. So actually, blimey, I didn't know that those
I guess
people
that's
that I
the
think
key,
the
isn't
fitness
it?
sector are doing.
I mean, I know the great work you do, because obviously we've had you on the podcast.
Yeah.
We've had obviously Mark on the podcast, John Oxley, and people like that. So I get to know what's going on. But if you just look around, it's not something you necessarily, because I guess you guys are stuck in what you're doing and just delivering. But in order for these sort of projects to work in terms of expand and get bigger, we need to find a way of going, this is what we do. And I don't necessarily think that's all about the results, in the sense of we've had this many people through this many. I think sometimes it's about, this is the project, this is the overriding project, this is what we're delivering, and almost like a sales pitch to go, this is the amazing stuff. And I don't know how, I don't know how you guys are doing it, or what we need to do to get that message out there, because you'll find, like with everything, once people see things working and they can see success and they can see the money that gets generated off the back of it, suddenly everyone goes, I want a part, I want a part, I want a part. And that then encourages the private sector, because it won't take long before the private sector starts seeing and going, actually, we can keep driving membership, or we can get involved in all of this.
Yeah.
And suddenly we're going to be even more successful. So I guess it's completely. How do we get that message out there to go, look at all this amazing work that these different councils are doing to encourage?
Right, great question. One of the things we're doing as part of our, we got a little bit of money, which I think I might have mentioned before. We got a little bit of money from Sport England and the 10 local authorities in Greater Manchester all chipped in, and we're doing various projects. One is like looking at a leisure centre. How do you take a leisure centre and turn it into a wellbeing centre physically? What's it got to do to change? So there's a great piece of work that SLC, Duncan Wood-Allen and the crew have been working with us on. The other one is workforce development, the transformational leadership, the making every contact counts, all that sort of stuff. We're working on workforce development. But another part of it is working with Salford University, who are looking at all the different programs, or many of the, not all of them, there's too many, but a lot of the programs across Greater Manchester that we already do in a place. And they're looking at them to, in effect, try and find the next Pre-Ab for Cancer, something that can be escalated. And if we can get another 2-3 of those, wouldn't that be good? But in doing that, they're coming across, I say, many of the programs that we do. They're almost auditing what we've got already. They're looking at the evaluation as well of those programs. Now, I'd love to see that done on a national basis, so that if we start off, and that's our intention, is to start off looking at some of these great examples up and down the country in a bit of detail. I hope that will lead to maybe Sport England going, do you know what? We'll fund, if you like, an audit of all the good things that are currently going on in our sector. And if we could actually have that, and then figure out with some really good marketing brains, if you're available, Ryan, and say, right, how can we actually then put that into in a way that the proposition of what we do, and we have to change hearts and minds. We've got to change our own to say this is what we're all about, and then present that in such a way. Wouldn't that be powerful? And if you imagine all of the long-term conditions, so the cancers, the cardiovascular disease, etc., diabetes, all the rest of it. Think of all these things, loneliness, suicide, even in males, things like that. All of these programs, if you like, all these challenges that our health and social care colleagues are wrestling with. We have got programs somewhere in the country doing some really, really good stuff, but it's probably minuscule, probably tiny, really important locally, but could be captured and put that into an index and go, here you go. If you've got these issues in your area, this is what could be done using the local assets of your leisure centre, your private gyms, even your resources that are available to you. If our mindsets are correct, then that could be done. And I would just love to see that sort of directory, if you like, created based on fact of what we're already doing, and then scale that up. Wouldn't that be good?
I mean, you're right though, because if you've got an amazing program down in Cornwall, for instance, and it could be lifted and put into Manchester or Harrogate or wherever, why don't we do it? And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? It's being able to have this approach where, yes, there's a great program there. Let's pull it up. Let's put it in there. And I mean, how that works, and like you say, it's suddenly then you go from regional to national to it's massive, isn't it? In terms of, I mean, it's not a small project, absolutely not. But you've got to know where these projects are to be able to lift them up. So the great stuff you do in GM Active, we should almost be able to go, that's the program, that's the criteria. Let's go put it in Leeds. Let's go put it in London, whatever.
And again, that is happening with Pre-Ab for Cancer. Pre-Ab for Cancer, Kirsty, who doesn't work for us at the moment, but she's still in GM, has helped quite a number, not just in this country either, of similar Pre-Ab for Cancer projects start up elsewhere. The risk is, and the facts are that unfortunately not all of them have been done through, if you like, leisure. They're being done from a clinical setting, because that's almost like the comfort zone of the clinical guys, they'll go, oh yeah, we'll set up a gym at the hospital, or do some stuff online and things like that. And that's the problem, is that if we don't actually do it through ourselves, then the clinical guys will go, well, we'll just do it ourselves, we'll set it up ourselves, and that's fine, but it's not fine. It's us missing the boat, but it also means, in practical terms, the beauty of the Pre-Op for Cancer in GM is that it's done through local community leisure centres. It's done online as well, but it's really convenient, and it's actually done in the community.
It's also, I
Rather
can
than people
imagine, it's a
going,
different feel as well for someone who's going to training at the leisure centre with a local coach and whatever, to then going into a hospital and doing
exactly.
it's a vastly different mental approach. So
Spot
when
on.
you are poorly, there's a different mindset. The last thing you want to do, I can imagine a lot of these guys are spending considerable time in hospital anyway with various other treatments. To go and do their leisure time or their physical activity in the same place they're also having their other treatment, it's probably not the right environment. And I don't know enough about your program, but I can imagine from a mindset, it's far nicer for them to go to the leisure centre and have that experience than it is if they were going to go and train in a hospital gym. And so I can imagine they get more out of it.
Yeah, and the evaluation bears that out, to be honest. And the amount of people, and again, always bear in mind they've got cancer and stuff like that, but they stick to the program. The vast majority, the statistics, these stats are fantastic in terms of completion, and then the stats after that, what happens to them is equally good. But that's an example of the unintended consequences. We could Pre-Op for Cancer success, if it's not done in the way that we've done it, with a sort of co-designing it with GM Cancer, it would be replicated in the old style clinical way, just doing what they've always done, do it themselves. So again, we need to be be aware of that, and try and avoid that happening by working more in collaboration.
And just as well, how do you think we get this closer collaboration with the medical? Do we have to go via the government through the NHS, or have you guys taken a different approach to go, okay, we're going to go straight to the NHS to create these relationships? What's the best approach, do you reckon, to move?
By far the best, Ryan, is, again, I use Pre-Ab was a very small program in Salford because somebody cared enough to set it up and get it going. It got noticed. We had Dr. John Moore became aware of it, who's very influential at the Christie, and made it happen in terms of getting us some initial funding, some seed funding for 2 years, and went on from there. So there's a lot of noise around, but should it be national, regional, local? It should be local. But we need the ways of saying, look, local programs need to be heard. They need to be evaluated, and that's key to the whole thing, to be honest. The evaluation needs to be robust, and then we can look to take it regionally, and then potentially nationally, and maybe even internationally. So yes, it starts at the local level, but we need to fight on all fronts. So we very much need the national lobbying, if you like, to say this is what we want to be part of the solution. Again, how we lobby is really important, but I think we've got to be greedy here, as I say, and we've got to fight on all three fronts. But for me, that is why I think spotlight on the good stuff that's happening locally and change a few hearts and minds. Whenever we show some examples to any of our colleagues in public health in particular, they're like, oh crikey, I didn't know you guys did that. And then they want to talk, and they want to go, well, yeah, that's one of our biggest problems as well, and that's across GM. So I think there's the tactic, if you like, would be for me is to highlight what's working well already, and take some time to understand how the people at local level made it happen, and then go, right, okay, so can we make this not more available for everybody else to tap into, like a library of programs and ways. But it's not as simple as there's a program off the shelf, just put it over here. But it's a start. It's an absolute start, and it's successful. And I think building that up alongside the lobbying going on at national level and regional level is the way forward. And as I say, there's stuff happening. Sport England investing lots of money into various places. That's happening over the next 12 months and more. things are happening to bring people together. SIMSPA with their LSIP, local skills improvement plans, which hopefully will unlock some funding for some of our workforce development initiatives, where we do need to understand that there are new skills that we need to train in.
Absolutely. It's a shame Glenda's not on today, because Glenda's a well-being coach. That's what she does for a living. And so she said for ages, if we're going to move in this direction, a lot of the challenge is the skill set. So we've got a lot of people who are qualified in fitness and everything, but they're not got the skill set in the well-being, and there's a massive difference. And I didn't really understand this until I obviously started talking to Glenda a lot more. But there is a big difference between supporting someone here with their fitness and their weight loss goals to suddenly going into a well-being coach, which is everything from mindset to alcoholism to sleep to mindset. There's so much to it.
Yeah.
That, yes, I think we need a massive education piece to come in and upskill all of our PTs and coaches, but also our managers, so they understand what we're trying to move forward.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that I agree with all that. And I think the systems leadership is what we've done. Transformational leadership program that we've done in GM is probably it's my favorite thing, actually. It's almost surpassed in pre-ab now, because it's actually dealing with this issue of saying, look, if we're trying to change and trying to work with other partners, then we need to understand how we do that more. And the answer is systems leadership, in terms of understanding how to be and how you've got to act and your mindset in order to work with other people in a productive way. And some people do it naturally, they really do. Lots of people don't, because we've had lots of years of being a commercially focused animal. And again, I'm greedy here, because I want my managers of the future to be fantastically good commercially, and I think we know how to do that. But I also want them to be very aware of the system that they're operating in, and how can they how they can be part of a bigger picture. And that's where the success lies in the future,
I think it's having a look at sort of going, okay, how do we make the move to well-being and the move to wellness commercially viable, but also keep that intrinsic belief that we're trying to help people.
And it is, and it's horse and cart. What comes first? It's got to be that we want to be part of a solution to a bigger picture. And it's almost like there's a book in there that the school will look after itself. And I think the numbers will look after themselves to a degree here. It's that faith of saying, look, if we're part of, we get 15% of the population now, and yet there's almost 100% of the population need us in some shape or form, but they're not buying it at the moment. So get it right, and the commercials will be almost a different scale, to be honest, a different scale that we're talking about.
I'm sure I read it's something like 1/3 of the UK population is dealing with some form of chronic illness.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's a huge, that's 20 odd million people. And it's absolutely crazy. So you only have to sort of go, work with those, find a way that we have an impact on those people's lives. Don't worry about the money to start off with, but if you've got those people in your facilities, you are going to earn somehow. Right.
You're right, Ryan. I mean, it's the aging population as well. All the stats, again, confront the brutal facts. All the stats are saying, look, this is going to get worse. It's not going to get any better. The current, trajectory that we're on as a society is like, we're going to go bankrupt, and we're going to have a lot of people that can't look after themselves, let alone look after, pay pensions and all the rest of it. So a bit doom and gloom, but we also know I'm about to be kicked out of my friendship group. I've got a load of old codger mates like me, and the amount of times I just keep on to them saying, "Oh, physical activity, we'll sort that," because they've got the ailments that we've all got: the blood pressures, the dodgy knees, dodgy hips, all that sort of thing. One or two even beginning to trip over them. So it's like, falls prevention programs for you guys next, and everything else. And I'm sort of joking, but I'm actually not. I'm like, but the physical activity can do so many things, arthritis and that sort of stuff. It's fantastic, as we know, but just knowing that hasn't been enough to today. Up to now, we know that the what we've got in our locker is incredibly powerful, but it's not been harnessed as it should do. And I think all we've got to do is stop whinging about that and say, look, what can we do differently? Adopt a different mindset here, and actually learn what the issues are from the other side of the fence, if you like, and then adapt what we've got to suit what they need, not what we think they need. It's a classic.
Well, you made an interesting point earlier about being part of the weight loss injection.
Yeah.
And you're right in a lot of senses, because some people need something to start with before they can get to the point of exercise. So if they're grossly obese, the chances of them, or the desire for them to want to go into a gym, because let's be honest, for me and you to walk into a gym, whether we're healthy, fit or not, it's a lot easier because we fit in. We're fairly normal in that environment. We don't stand out. We don't look. You get someone who's morbidly obese walks into a gym and they are very visible. However we want that to look, they are very visible in that gym. And it takes a very brave... I always think it's amazing when someone who is hugely overweight goes into a gym and decides they're making that change, because psychologically, that's a huge thing for them to do, because they know everyone's looking at them. Because those people, you can't hide. And it's horrible in that sense. It shouldn't be like that, but it is. So if you've got a solution that can help them get to a certain point, and then, but if that solution started within our environment, the chance of them then maintaining into a more fitness journey, you're doubling, tripling the opportunity that person will actively take part.
Exactly right, Ryan. And I think we've got to get over ourselves sometimes. You know, it's almost akin to, you know, the big bodybuilder gym instructor giving me his program because that's what he's comfortable with. It feels a bit like that sometimes. It's like, guys, you may disagree, but you know, I've got example of a good friend of mine, used to be my ENTS manager. He's been overweight for years, had all sorts of issues, a bit like me, really, high blood pressure, gout, all sorts of things. And he's gone and had the tummy tuck, if you like, and it's transformed his life. I mean, he looks fantastic and he's done really well. Now, I know colleagues, some fitness colleagues, will go, oh, you know, you should have just lost weight. I think you're buying in, guys, to a little bit of the, if you like, the conservative politics here. Like, everybody's got to sort themselves out. It's really bloody difficult when you've got the whole system that we live in, you know, making it really easy to be fat and unhealthy and inactive. And some people need a bit more help than that. So I think we just got to get off our high horse a little bit and say, look, the NHS needs some help here. And if you, the clever thing is help the NHS with their resource needs. And like you've just said, and once they're in your facility, do what you do really well and flog them a membership, you know, get them in. But never lose the fact that you're trying to do something here for the population, for the individual and for the population in your local area. And, you know, I promise you, when we've got great examples in GM of organizations taking that approach, and I've done for a number of years, and they're financially robust as well, because they get the commissions, they get maybe 5-10% management fee from each of the commissions, like we did in Rochdale. There's money to be made there, but that cannot be your starting point. I can't stress that enough. And unfortunately, that is still the mindset too often. And the NHS back away, the government back away, and the results are, as we discussed at the start, we don't get turned to because they don't trust us that we have the right purpose that's driving us. So we need to sort ourselves out, and then we can have a chance of being commissioned.
Well, that's why that VAT thing doesn't work. Every time we go, we shouldn't be paying VAT. And you're going, well, you might be right. That might be a solution. But if we keep fighting the no VAT thing for all the government ever sees is they want money from it. That's effectively what we're asking. Right. And then you have a look and go, okay, out of all the companies that we're going to reduce that VAT for, how is that going to drive more participation? Because it won't. All it does is puts more money into the... So are you going to reduce the fees? Well, let's be honest. The big budget clubs, they don't need to reduce the fees anymore. I mean, it's $17, $15, $99, whatever they are, $19.99. You don't really need a club any cheaper than $19.99 to encourage £4 a week, £5 a week for someone to use the gym. I'm sorry, it's cheap enough. They don't need any more savings. So ultimately, that VAT will simply go into profit. Those clubs, guarantee you, would not put any new, programs in place to encourage greater participation. Because one, they don't need it. Most of those clubs are fairly full. So I don't think it'll encourage any participation. obviously there's a fight. The leisure centres, they get a lot of them get, because they trust, don't pay the VAT. So there's the arguments over that. But then you go look at what they deliver. If you take GM active clubs and then you take private clubs, the difference these guys here do for the community versus that private club is massive. With all the programs you guys run, and you're still going, that's what a VAT discount should be providing, not more profit for the club. And I think that's why the government look at us and just go, come with something different. Come, what else
Ryan,
are you going to give us?
Great point. Absolutely fantastic point. And wouldn't it be good if it was a case of, estimate the savings on the VAT, if you like, and then say, and those savings, what we'd like to do as a sector is reinvest that in some shape or form. And with the cost of living crisis, again, a lot of the, if not all actually, sort of local authority connected operators are all looking about how do we actually increase our concessionary schemes, whether, we never used to put concessionary schemes on swimming lessons, for instance, but we know people are so hard up that is happening now.
Wow.
GLL, for instance, are putting concessionary schemes in here, there, and everywhere to actually help people who can't afford to send their kids to swimming lessons. So again, most people don't know that, but that's what's happening, and that's our local authorities are asking the operators, how can you contribute to the cost of living crisis? And that's what people are coming up with. So yeah, I've never thought about that before, but on a national scale, wouldn't it be good if the VAT argument that's been around for years changed and it said, look, yes, we'll generate money and we want to reinvest that money as a sector. I'm not quite sure how it would work, but I think the principle
you'd almost have to sort of go, if you save 20%, you have to prove to taxman whatever that you've put in something that's how, you know what I mean? I think that's what you'd have to do. So go, okay, what is your project for us to, and it almost then is a government investment in that project, isn't it?
Yeah,
it
reminds me a little bit of housing and affordable housing. You want to build houses, well, you've got to make a percentage of them affordable, or Section 106 money. So money comes back into the authority in a different way. So yeah, there's something in that potentially. And again, it's all part of the indications that we're aware of the issues and we'd like to do something about it, rather than, like you said, deaf ears. Can you give us a VAT break, please? No. Okay.
I just don't know any government that would give you money back with no return, because that's what you're asking for. You're asking for VAT with no uptake. There's no benefit for the government in that VAT discount. And that's why, like I say, they're willing to, well, to be fair, they weren't even willing for the local authorities. That was hard fought for through the courts. But in terms of private, it's never going to happen unless there's something in return, because all they're doing is losing millions in revenue and then going, well, actually, all it does is going to put more money into shareholders' pockets or more money into the owners' pockets, but you're not going to drive any more business. It might help some clubs survive, but let's be honest, if they're that tight, there's fundamental changes in the business that are needed anyway.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
But right, I've had you on for far too long already. In terms of where you see things moving forward, or where you like to see things moving forward, what's the next year looking like for you guys?
Yeah, well, we're going to start a podcast actually with some support. Yes, I know. Well, we're going to mention it a few times. We want to shine a spotlight on. We want to do two things through a podcast and through other means. Hopefully with Health Club Management Magazine support, with Liz supporting us and stuff like that. We want to really highlight some of these good examples up and down the country. So there's a bit of an appeal through you, Ryan, if you don't mind. So anybody who's got some really good programs that they're really proud of and wouldn't mind sharing, then we'd like to hear from them. So we'd really like to do that. The podcast is going to be doing that. So shining a spotlight on some good examples. But also, it's going to be called The Conveners, the podcast, and we're going to look at invite people on who probably aren't on many podcasts from our sector, but have got a connection to our sector. So, if you like, colleagues from health, for example, Dr. John Moore, who I've mentioned was the instigator of pre-alpha cancer in GM. He's got some fascinating insights and thoughts about what the future could hold, not just for pre-alpha cancer, but in terms of physical activity, using wearable technology at scale and things like that. So we want to bring some of those people who might challenge us a bit as well in some of our thinking. So that's going to be coming up, and I say that's sort of powered by Future Fit. So that's one, and then fascinating to see what the investment from Sport England brings in the sort of systems leadership approach, because that really is built on the back of the local pilots, and that hopefully will encapsulate a lot of what we've been talking about today, really, at a sort of very a sort of place-based, as they call it, local level. So yeah, fascinating to see how that happens, and the SIMSPA LSIPs will start to cough out, later on this year and next year. So hopefully that goes to plan, and there's some investment flowing up and down the country into our sector to upskill and whatnot our workforce. So yeah, fascinating time ahead. Fascinating time ahead.
Awesome. Now, what I'll do, because obviously you want people to get in touch, we'll make sure that all your details are at the end of the podcast. Just so that people, if you've got any great projects you want to be on Andy's podcast, just out of interest, when are you thinking of launching that, Andy? What sort of timescale we at?
Probably the new year, I would imagine. We're looking at the sort of logistics of it all now. Ideally, we want to get people into a studio up and down the country, but if not, then we'll do it online if we have to. But I'd like to go and sort of see some of these things in the flesh, if you like, and meet people in the flesh if we can.
Absolutely. So if anybody's got a project out there that we don't know about, or sorry, Andy doesn't know about, then obviously get in touch with Andy either through LinkedIn or his email at the end of this project. So now I always love having you on, Andy, because it's so insightful, because obviously it's a side of the industry that I don't always get to see as much as I probably should. So it's great to hear. I think with you going freelance and becoming a consultant, I think that can only be good for our industry. You've obviously done some amazing stuff up there in the north, and I think being able to take those projects and your way of thinking across the UK, I think can only be good for our industry. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. So good luck with that.
Thanks,
and then hopefully once you've launched all the podcasts and you've got all that stuff, so hopefully we'll get you on again next year, and talk through all the amazing projects you've actually then started to deliver with the work that you're doing. So appreciate your time this morning, and I'm sure we'll get you on again soon.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.